What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today, we're going to talk about the OG Passport Bros. The reason why we're going to talk about the OG Passport Bros is because I was going in my comment section of my video, and one of the subscribers suggested that I talk about the OG Passport Bros, the original ones, the ones before this trendy new title called Passport Bros pop up. I actually look at this group of Passport Bros as babies, like passport babies, right? Because if you're a grown man and you ain't got your passport, if you ain't even thought about having your passport so you can travel the world just in general, you're you're a baby. All right. So, but let's talk about the original Passport Bros and the intent behind the Passport Bros, how it all kind of started, right? Okay, so first, the original Passport Bros they started probably back in, I would say, it really started back in World War One, to be honest. World War One, the original Passport Bros. We were just talking about the black ones, right, in particular, but all the Passport Bros started in, I'm gonna say World War One, when they were going over to Europe. A lot of African Americans was going over to Europe to fly for the French, right, during that war, right, to fly planes, because America wouldn't allow us to fly America. Like, they wouldn't let us be in our, like, we had the Air Force, but they wouldn't let us fly on behalf of America. But we had the best pilots in the world, so the African Americans were like the best pilots in the world. So we went over there and volunteered like mercenaries. Like, throughout history, Africans have been mercenaries for foreign armies since the existence of other races. All right, so we went over there as mercenaries and fought in their air forces against the axis of evil, right? And when they was in France, they were encountering foreign women for the first time, right? And a lot of African Americans fell in love with some of these French women, right? And what they would do is, after the war, the women that they would fall in love with, they would go back, right? And they will come here and say, man, in America we get treated like this, we get treated like that, but if you go to France, you get treated differently. You see, the Europeans weren't racist like the white people in America. The Europeans didn't see us the same way. They saw us black. They were interested in us. They were, some of them were scared, and if they didn't know something about us, whatever hate that it was ignorance. But once they got to know us and they kind of talked to us, they were all about us, right? And also, black people were a lot of the times we're the heroes, and we were known and we were famous for saving the French and various other Europeans. So we started with a great reputation, and that's how. And then World War One happened, same thing, right? And when World War Two happened, same thing. And then we end up going to Japan. All these military bases throughout all these wars, African Americans end up going to, right? So we went to Japan and we encountered the Japanese woman, and all of a sudden there's a black man and a Japanese woman having relationships, real relationships. Because keep in mind, the Japanese are being oppressed. Black people, we're in the military being oppressed while trying to liberate other people from being oppressed, right? So there was a union of hardship there. So, with the commonalities, black men and Japanese women, kind of got together and formed a bond. I would say that Japanese and Africans have, out of all Asian people and black people, the best relationship are Japanese and black people. I love the Japanese people. I love Japan. I know there can be some weirdos there. There's not a lot of racism there, and if it is, it's not really racism. It's something else. It's more of a nationalism thing. But for the most part, Japanese and African people worldwide, we get along great. Love the Japanese people. I'll always say that, right? And so then you got the Philippines. As we was hopping in the Pacific, fighting everybody and diddy-dotting everybody, we end up in the Philippines. There are a lot of military personnel end up staying in the Philippines. A lot staying in the Philippines after the war is over, going back to the Philippines and finding those women that was there. And then when we got to the Philippines, we realized there were other black people there already who were Filipino, right? They were called Negro. There's an island in the Philippines that's like where the original inhabitants of the Philippines are. They are black. They look like us. When I was in the Philippines, right? When I was in the Philippines, I was shocked that the Filipinos was looking like me. And when I walked around, like the real countryside, they looked like me. I was even dropped in the jungle. I'm talking about in the jungle where people live And I'm talking about the jungle, all right? The jungle, right? Rice paddies, far away from anybody, like isolated areas, and there were black people there in the village. And when they saw me, they was like, hey, they called me a negro. This is the first time I was ever called a nigga outside of America. And I was like, for a minute, I was like, hold up, right? But they didn't mean it in a derogatory way. They was speaking Spanish, you know, the Spanish and you know, all that stuff. So they have a lot of that language along with English in their vocabulary. And they went in the village and got the man who was here. He was the son of somebody who was at World War II, right? And there was another little black girl in the village, right? And they asked me, look, this is real. They asked me in the Philippines. They said they wanted me. Keep in mind, you know, people's perspective on life is different. I swear to God, I didn't do it. I'm about to tell you what they asked me. They wanted me. They gathered some women in the village, and they wanted me specifically to have sex with their women to impregnate them, because they believe, and as far as they're concerned, black is better for strength and agility and it's just overall survival. So they wanted me to impregnate their women so they can have more black babies, because that's what they preferred. I swear to God, I didn't do it. All right, even though I could have, right? Because it was only I mean, when I say we was in a remote village in the Philippines, I mean, we did a lot of stuff out there. I'm gonna have morals, so I just. Plus, these girls were underage. They were like underage, okay? And I was like, I'm not into that. And there was this one white guy. I think he had sex with one of these girls in the village. We can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure he did. But anyway, so a lot of us military personnel, we go over there, and white people too. The passport bros is not really a black thing. It's all a military thing, right? So white Americans are also experiencing other cultures for the first time ever, right? You're talking about most people who join the military are country folk or poor folk who don't have the opportunity to jet set around the world, to get on ships and travel back and forth around the world. So this was their first exposure from what you would consider the peasant class, the warrior class, overseas, seeing other cultures and seeing their women and seeing how they treat you, which is vastly different from the American culture, all right? From American culture, right? Because the issue that we're having now is that it's the American culture, the white woman culture, that white feministic culture that has infected our black women in America. That's what it is. But in other places, they're not infected with that white woman culture shit. You understand? And that's what we were getting exposed to, right? So it's so bad that when I was there, the military had an epidemic of military people marrying these women and bringing them back to America, right? But also the dark side of that is a lot of those Filipinos, mainly Filipinos, knew they were taking advantage of the military personnel, right? So what they would do is they knew they can get their green card by marrying a military personnel, because if you're in the military and you get married to a foreigner and she comes over here, it was an easy streamline to get your citizenship. And what they would do is they would marry some guy that's not very desirable, right? Some guy who never had a lot of luck in America because of their disposition. Maybe they weren't very attractive, or you know, maybe a little bit overweight, or they just didn't meet up to the standards of the American woman. But over there, they see things a little differently. Overseas, looks is not always the thing over there. Sometimes it's your capability to take care of them is the main thing. Looks can come second, right? So they see you as somebody who can take care of them. So they will come over, get their citizenship, but if they really didn't like the guy, as soon as they got their citizenship, they would divorce him. That's why you see a lot of white men with Filipinos, right? A lot of white men with Filipinos, right? So after that, we would come and tell our homeboys, hey man, because a lot of us would want to fly back. Like I swear, when I got out of the military, had all plans to going back to the Philippines, go grab me a wife, right? Period, right? So that was the beginning of the passport. So that started to branch out. So then the word got out, and as far as South America, the military has bases down there, and we go down there. So we get exposed to the Brazils, to the Colombias, to all that stuff, right? And they were like, dang, these women are so nice. Because they're very feminine, right? They're not weak, they're feminine. There's a difference between weak and feminine. You can be strong and feminine. Very, very feminine, very, very strong, right? People get misunderstood. They think feminine equates to weakness. It's not, right? So even American women here think that because the women overseas are feminine, super feminine and submissive, or what you would like to say, that they're weak people. They're not. They're not weak, right? Especially the black ones. The black ones are always, listen, black women are always black women no matter where a black woman is. No matter what her black culture is, once you get over the honeymoon phase, a black woman is going to be a black woman. So you can't get a black woman over here, all right, because of this and that. You're going to have the same issue over here because of this and that, period. Unless you got money and they may tolerate you. And most of the time they tolerate you over here too, all right? Whether it's, so either way, it's the same thing. I'm telling you right now, it's the same thing. Black women in Africa, black women in America. After you get over the honeymoon phase, oh, she's so exotic and this and that. Guess what? What? She's still a black woman. And that black woman, that DNA gonna come out, all right? So then there were some older guys, right? A lot of these guys were older vets, and they decided they were gonna go to Brazil, right? Because it's very close, it's cheaper to get to Brazil, right? And they would make tapes because they were looking for wives, right? It was never about having sex. Sex exploitation is a whole nother thing, right? Sex fake, that's just called going overseas for prostitution. There's no name for that. That's just something men do when they go to Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic is the place to go for sex. You can there's websites where the women already advertising themselves, what they do as far as anal and all sorts of stuff, and how much it costs per day with their picture on it and everything. There are agencies in America that will hook you up with a vacation package in the Dominican Republic, where they will pick you up in a limo from a hotel with 1 or 2 women, depending on what package you pick, and they will take you to the hotel where you have a pick between 1 or 2 women per day, right, that they have in their harems, right, and you would enjoy them on the resort. That shit's still happening right now in the Dominican Republic. I swear to God, go on Google and look it up, all right? That is straight, that's prostitution that's happening, right? But the passport bros, they wanted wives. They were black men who wanted wives, right? And they just weren't having success in America. There were black men who had money, good jobs. They could had the money to travel. They had the time to travel because they were well-to-do. They were upper-class black men that had enough money where they can jet set around the world. And they started to say, hey, if you come to Brazil, these ladies are very nice. These ladies, they weren't bashing African-American women. They were just saying that these women here are different. And I enjoy these women here, and they seem to enjoy me. And the relationship matches, hey guys, you should probably think about this as an option. It wasn't about, let me bash my own women back home. Let me go to these countries and get with these women while bashing and bragging and bashing my women back home. That's not what it was about. It was about men, black men, doing the same thing white people do, which is jet set around the world and have life experiences and see that there are other women around the world. There are more options than just your local women, right? Which is something everybody does on various different scales. Most people in America who live in small villages, what do they want to do? They want to leave their small village, all the people that they know and they're used to, and they want to go to the city. That's why small villages right now in America are dying off, because nobody wants to live in a small village and just deal with that small world. So we got people who live in cities. The city is the entire world. You know, everybody's having their own life experiences, and some people want to travel the world. They don't want to be restricted to just this place. And Africans should not be restricted to just America. And that was the original movement of the OG Passport Bros. They went with respect, and they made it a point that when you come to these countries, you come with respect. And then Colombia became an option because Colombia has a lot more black women. So there's a lot of African Americans who wanted a black woman, but they wanted a black woman that was more feminine or that was more compatible with the way they wanted to raise a family. Colombia is a little easier for black people than Brazil because of the way Brazil see them, the way they made, you know, the way the culture is in Brazil versus the way it is in Colombia. Colombia, they embrace their blackness a little bit more, right? And that makes you, as a black person, that will fit better because plus Colombian women are beautiful, right? But the black women are beautiful, and black women are beautiful everywhere. Let me tell you something. Black women are beautiful everywhere. You know, if you go to Africa, right, and you see all those beautiful women, and you come back and you start looking at your black women here, you'll realize it's the exact same woman. Their skin shine the exact same way. Their smiles the exact same way. And their colors and their beautiful way of dressing is the same way. It's funny how, and I know I'm getting off, it's funny how you look at a black African-American woman, right, and you see her wearing all these colors and expressing herself with various multiple different colors, and people categorize that as ghetto. But then when you go to Africa or any other country and you see the same black woman doing the same thing with multiple colors and expressing themselves and this and that, that's exotic. But when it happens here in front of you, it's a ghetto. You see how we think is retarded, right? Black women have always expressed themselves with colors and brightness. That's what we do. We Africans, we've always done that. And we're not going to stop just because we're over here in America living with white folk. because we're still African, all right? So I just wanted to say that. But so the original passport bros were just black people who wanted to have experiences overseas and look for wives. It was strictly for wives. And it gave us the ability to raise our children in a place that wouldn't try to raise the children for us. Because in America, the system tells us what we can do with our kids. It tells us how to raise our kids, and then wonder why they grow up and can't fend for themselves because of the way the government operates, right? But overseas, a man is allowed to be a man, right? A man is allowed to be a man, and a woman is allowed to be a woman. And as long as they get together and some compatible, they can raise a nuclear family the way nature intended, right? So now Africa has always been a place that has been kind of like cut off to us, because first of all, there weren't that many flights to Africa for African Americans, right? There weren't a lot of airlines flying weekly to Africa, because it wasn't a destination that they wanted us Africans to go to. The only people who was going to Africa was white people to exploit the women, right? And our resources and the men. All right, white people go to Africa to exploit the women, the resources, and the men. That's what they were doing. And the last thing they wanted was our black ass going over there, seeing them exploit our women, our men, and our resources after exploiting us, right? But now, right, that Africans on the continent, after fighting for the liberation of their countries, at least partially, because the fight is still continued. The revolution has started. The second phase has started right now. Let's go, all right? But they started to become more capable, and they started coming over here, right? So then we started seeing more African people who look like us. But back then, we didn't even, unless they didn't talk, we didn't know, right? But we started interacting with African people, especially on the East Coast of America, quite often, right? So the Nigerian, the Cameroonian, the Ghanaian, which are the main ones that we've been interacting with for the better part since I would say probably the 40s. The 40s, they've been coming over here slowly in small numbers, but they've been increasing as the decades have moved on. And they have integrated within the African community, especially in the DMV. This is the area, you gotta remember, the East Coast is right next to Africa, all right? So if you're in the Midwest or the West Side, you probably didn't have these experiences, right? You probably didn't see too many of them. But here on the East Coast, they've been here, right? And as time has gone on, they come more and more. The only time the only time continental Africans and African Americans are separated here is on Sunday, because they go to their African churches and we go to our traditional African American churches because they're already established. But Africans do come and participate and preach at African American churches, and African Americans do go to preach at and participate in African churches, as I used to be in the church, and I used to also participate and go to African churches. So I'm a witness to that thing. It happens, all is normal. And then guess what we all do after church? We get down when we eat together, right? That's what we do. Africans are constantly inviting African Americans, their co-workers, their friends, to come to church with them, to fellowship with them on Sundays. It's a normal thing here. So don't let these weirdo incel people on the internet make it seem like we've been fighting. We don't fight. On Saturday, guess what? We party downtown together. Black people from America, from the Caribbean, and from Africa, we party together here. We are together here. Over here, there's no separation. We marry each other on a regular basis. And listen, let me tell y'all something. And y'all may not like this. African Americans might like this. There's going to be a point in time. There is going to be a point in time where there is no distinction between the Africans that came over here forcefully during the transatlantic slave trade and the Africans that came over here after 1965. The ones the influx. There will be no difference. The only difference will be known in the history books. I'm telling you, that's how much blending has happened. And there are a lot of African Americans who want to distinguish themselves from Africans because they're afraid, they don't know. That's natural. A lot of people are afraid of things they don't understand, right? And they'll get over it. And if they don't get over, oh well, it doesn't really matter what they think anyway, because this is nature taking its course. We will be reabsorbed back into the body of Africa and of African people. It's gonna happen. Ain't nothing they can do about it. Just like ain't nothing white people can do about being absorbed back into the ancestral freaking origins. That's why white people are disappearing, right? Because their genes are recessive, right? They have no choice. There's nothing they can do. Their population as white people is going away. They will be in the history books as a viruside humanoid that destroyed the earth 1,000 years ago, and we had to take it back and rejuvenate the earth. That's what's going to happen, right? So just like that, one day, the African American as you know it will just be blended in with their African origin root, and we'll just be talking about the group of Africans that first came over here, you know, and did this and went through this. So our history will never go away. We'll always be remembered as African Americans. We're legendary, all right? We'll never die off in history. We'll always be remembered as a group of people. And other ethnic groups, other Africans will start joining this group that we call African Americans. But I don't believe this place will be called America for too much longer. And when I say longer, I'm talking macro history, meaning a couple hundred years. I don't think America's gonna, as you know it, is gonna be here. It's not gonna be that. And I know a lot of you guys think that this is just gonna stay, it's gonna be like this forever, but nothing stays forever. No empire. America's actually a very short empire, to be honest. It's very short. Like, it's ending really fast compared to all the rest of them. But the original Passport Bros are just black men who want to see the world and explore the world, just like everybody, all the other white people who get to do and explore the world. But we are supposed to be different. We're not supposed to be exploiters. We're supposed to be the true explorers that we are, the original explorers of the world who populated this world, who had all the adventures to populate this world. That's us, right? So we're just trying to get back to that. Now, these new Passport Bros are pups, all right? They're babies, all right? They're babies who can't get women in America because they fat, right? And they shaped like bowling balls and shit, right? They look funny. They constantly in the friend zone, or they got weird. They may be attractive, but they have zero personality. Zero personality, right? And they just don't attract the women that they're attracted to. And someone keeps telling them that they can go overseas and have zero personality, right? And be all completely and totally out of shape, and they can go get something. Now you can, but I guarantee if you got zero personality and you're super fat and out of shape and ugly, and come on, man, we know there's some people who just don't take care of themselves, right? If you go over there, if you get a woman, I 100% guarantee you she's exploiting you. As soon as she get over here and get her goddamn her citizenship, she's going to leave your ass. Okay, she may give you a couple kids, but then she's gonna leave your ass. All right, and when you're at work, all right, she got a boyfriend, guaranteed. Shit happens all the time. I've seen it happen all the time, man. Them white boys used to bring them Filipinos from the Filipinos, and like, bruh, and you know that white boy could never book anybody. Yeah, bring his fine ass Filipino wife here, and guess what she was doing while he was on duty, running through the barracks, right? Being community, And the military got tired of it, and they kind of put a stop. They kind of put a stop to it. So now, when military personnel go overseas to, they want to get a wife, there's this whole new process because it's an epidemic, especially in the white community, right? So if you go to the Philippines, if you go to Japan, if you go to some of these other countries that Americans have historically been, right, there are enclaves of Americans who live there. In the Philippines, there's whole places where it's just a whole bunch of old white men with young, very, very white. Let me tell you something. White people, when they go overseas, they like the young ones because they can get away with it. Black people, we don't do that shit. That's not our shit. That's their shit. They like the young ones. Like, that shit's weird. They do that shit in Japan. They like the young ones. I'm talking about 15, 16, like that. That's what they into. I'm talking about old white men. They, oh God, man. I swear, man. The shit you see, look, it's like the iceberg. You see a little bit of the ice, it look big as shit above the water, but underneath it, it's like 100 times bigger. Think about that shit when it comes to the nasty, devilish, demon shit white people be doing overseas, man. Like, it's, oh man, to this day, right now, right? But every place where there's a military base, you go outside that base, there's a group of African Americans and Africans who live there and enjoying life, because guess what? It's also cheaper to live there too. Much cheaper. So you mean I can take my money, I can leverage it better? We've been knowing we can leverage our money better. Build a house, have a better quality of living, like much better quality of living, right? What's the point of going to work, working 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, make all this money, and then when you go on vacation, where do you go? You go to a bungalow on a beach where it's sunny all the time and you can live a simple life. But what if you skip all that making money and you just go straight to living on a bungalow on a beach and living a simple life? You skip all the hard shit and go straight to the good shit, right? A lot of people have already figured that shit out. And then you get a wife that's actually gonna act like a wife and do wifely duties, and all you gotta do is do your husbandly duties, and you can live a nice, simple life and raise your children responsibly and respectfully, and you ain't gotta worry about a lot of the dangers that happen in the West. That's the original point. Now, getting your stick wet, passport bros, they just want to have sex, like any young man of any place. They just want to have sex, and they'll pay for it. And they're paying for it. And they're willing, a lot of men are willing to pay for it. Hey, I paid for it before. I'm not even going to sit here and say I ain't never paid for it. Sometimes it's easy to pay for it. That way you ain't got to deal with her afterwards. Shit. It's an old saying. You pay for them to go away. All right? You pay so they can go away. Because, look, I've been married 14 years. And I'm still paying for it. All right? And it's the most expensive I've ever had. This is the most, listen, being married is the most expensive goddamn, it's the most expensive transaction ever just to get some. All right? But that's a joke, but y'all know what I mean. But anyway, I just want to talk about the original OG passport bros, and they would never accept the original passport bros, and I'm just saying that for argument's sake, would never accept the term passport bros. They would call themselves international men, black men who are international, worldly black men. That's what they would call a name with respect, because they were men of respect. That's the original form. And what we don't need is these young, dumb Negroes full of cum that think they're gonna fly to Africa, right? I don't care, you can go anywhere else. They're gonna fly to Africa and start exploiting our African women the same way the white people went to Africa and exploited our women. Because that's exactly what it looked like, all right? So me as a Pan-African, I'm supposed to make sure that the African, when they see an African-American like myself, they know that there's African-Americans fighting against condemning that type of behavior. And at least trying to give advice to those little young, horny men that if you're gonna go do that, don't kiss and tell, don't disrespect the women in their own country, and everything will be all right. All right? Anyway, that's all I gotta say. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.